Hello and welcome back to the channel. So today I'm going to do a video on my Sunbeam Sport restoration. This was back in 2004, so I had a digital camera but not video. So it's all still images unfortunately, but you'll hopefully see where I got the vehicle from and where I've ended up to today, which is 20 years later. This was my first home restoration, although I've done plenty of restorations in the past. It was in a garage, and you have a lot of facilities that you don't have at home: pit, ramps, power tools, benches, even down to materials, sanding paper and fillers and stoppers and primers and whatnot. So a bit of a learning curve for anyone who is doing or attempting a home restoration. You do need quite a bit of equipment, although you can make do and mend with bits of angle iron and a hammer and a dolly. It's a lot easier in a garage when you've got the facilities, I was fortunate when I did my 1300 GT, a few of them down there, but unfortunately you move on, but it helps you build your skills a bit better as well, and you have to just adapt to what equipment you've got. So we'll start straight away without waffling on too much, but as you'll see in a minute, the car was green when I bought it, and it'd been hand painted, and the previous owner, Andy, who's the guy who I'd go to a lot of shows, he bought it and then flogged it onto me and attempted to clean the paint off the hand painted green paint and created a few dents here, there and everywhere and highlighted the corrosion. So we'll move on from there and you'll see what I mean when we get to the images. Okay, so this is a picture of the car outside Andy's house when I first purchased it. As you can see, it was a complete car. Then when it arrived, you'll see by the pictures there, some of the green paint had been removed, and this is what I was left with. So it was a bit of a mess, to be honest, when I first thought, oh God, what have I done here? I've never had one of these cars. But on the basis, it was reasonably solid. A bit of corrosion on the bottom edges, which you would expect from a 70s car. But being my first Hillman Imp to restore, it was a bit of an unknown. Horrors appeared everywhere when you start digging, and screen pillars and whatnot, bottom of the wings, but it wasn't too daunting. You just got to tackle them slowly and steadily. So the first part I tackled was the driver's screen pillar. Whizzed the screen out, cleaned all the corrosion off and cut the outer corroded section off, as you can see, and finished it in red oxide. Then I fabricated a replacement section, just out of a bit of steel, put it in the bench, bent over the end to get a nice flat edge, and then put a bit of a curve on it to follow the original curvature of the screen pillar, and then tacked it in and made sure I was happy with the fit. So the next section I tackled was the bottom of the passenger wing wheel arch, end of sill. Cut all the corrosion out, as you can see there, ground it back and got it all in a decent condition. Red oxided it after I'd done a bit of repair to the inner arch where the new piece. With being new to the Imp world, I didn't know whether you could buy what panels, and they were a bit scarce 20 years ago. So I made a bottom wheel arch repair section, as you can see here in the image. Did it out of 2 or 3 sections, welded them together and kept trial fitting, making sure I was happy. Once I was happy, I then installed it but welded it along to match the existing wheel arch and the wing. Really happy with this, which was one of my first hand fabricated sections. Swiftly moving on from the front, I tackled the rear section. The sill was really good on this, so I didn't have any works to do in it, but when I cut the bottom of the lower rear wing off, which had been replaced in the past, there was a slight bit of corrosion at the end of the sill and on the inner arch. So again, with my fabrication skills and hammer and bench, and knocked up a couple of new replacement sections and gave it all a good clean up. It wasn't too bad really, because the arch had been replaced, or the whole wing had been replaced in the back along with the inner section of the boot area. It was quite solid, so I made half a rear wing sill extension, should we say, and a wheel arch out of a bit of tin, and got the shape the best I could, and then just dressed it off with filler at a later date. It was to tackle the rear quarter at the back. I cleaned off the underseal. I want to keep most original underseal on because you can't replicate it, and just took it off where the corrosion was, as you can see, and that revealed a bit of it rust on the inner arch and the inner wing, which I cleaned up and knocked a new piece up, as you can see here. TIG welded it in, or MIG welded it, I can't quite remember at the time, and then give it a good coating of red oxide. Rather than buy a new piece, I made a repair section. This was a bit awkward because it had a double curve on it, but managed to do it in the bench, just take a bit of time. Wasn't too difficult. So I then moved back to the front, jiggling all over about a bit here, but it's probably just the way I got the pictures. Did a bit of repair on the front corner because it had a bit of a dint in it, but also a bit of corrosion at the bottom of the front wheel arches. This is where they tend to go, really, the bottom sort of 6 inches on the Imps. If you've got one with good sills, you're reasonably lucky. It's like most cars, it's always the bottom half that suffers very rarely the top. Sills are quite easy obtainable now, but they were a bit more difficult at the time of my restoration. We then moved back to the offside rear quarter, very similar to the near side, but this was a bit more heavily corroded because this was an original panel from the 70s rather than the replacement panel which the other side had. So I cut all the corrosion out, which is under the battery tray. This is where the batteries tend to leak and then it runs down and it eats away at the steel, and then before you know it you've got a big hole. And I cleaned it all up, made a new piece. This section I actually managed to get a replacement fabricated section off someone off the internet at the time, so I was quite lucky because it is a real awkward piece to manufacture. Then moved to the driver's front, and again, like the passenger side, the front and rear of the front wings had to be repaired, so I cut all the corrosion out, cleaned everything off, rust treated it with Genolite, red oxided it, fabricated my section and welded it in. Next was the end of the outer sill. Now I had to put a section in this driver's sill of about 18 inches, but I couldn't warrant replacing it because once I cut the bottom half of the rear wing off, it's like a bit like an MGB. It has an extension behind the front of the rear wheel arches, and it only had a little bit of corrosion. I thought, well, it's not, I can't justify cutting off an original panel just to put a patch in. So I put a patch in the sill, and then I also repaired the inner section of the sill, really solid. Then I fabricated a new section. This was the out of a bit of steel in the bench. I bought like a bench folder by then and put a return edge on it, and then just folded it up and tried to get the best shape I could. And it does taper from the beginning of the B post up to the back of the wheel arch. Moving on then, there was a little bit of repair required on the wheel arch. Again, I couldn't justify putting a full arch in for the sake of a couple of inches. So I ground it all out, made a new little piece in my bench out of 2 pieces and welded them together and put them in the car. Finally, with all the welding done, it was back to filling and shaping. Now, people have a bit of a hope about putting filler in, but for me, I have no issue whether it's a skimming or a little bit thicker. It's there to get your shape back. As long as you're not filling holes with it, then that's what its purpose is. So managed to got to do a couple of passes on this because it's very difficult. It's a bit of a curve. It's not flat. It's curved and it's awkward to get just right. But I got the end results in the end. Same down the front. After I put the first lot on and blocked it down and primed it, you still need to do a little bit more. There's always little bits that you're never happy with, but this is the important part. Once you've got this right and the primer on down good, the top coat gives you the finish you want and get your end results. Looks like I'm a bit mixed up with my photos, but anyway, I had to end up repairing the bonnet, which is usual with any car. The corrosion at the front, they don't rust-proof them properly in the factory in the 70s because they didn't expect them to last. So the inner section, the outer section goes on these Hillman Imps. So it was cut all the front off on the outside and then repair the inner section and got my old faithful red oxide out, cleaned all the corrosion off, which there wasn't very much on the inside, the rest of the panel, and hey ho, got the result I needed. Then it was 2-pack primered inside and out, made sure I got all my repairs happy, fitted the bonnet and made sure I got all the gaps correct, which is the important thing because it's a big thing at the front where it drops down. With the front panel slightly different to the, should we say, the rest of the car. The car was in primer, apart from some of the auxiliary panels, but this is just an image of the repair section I fabricated and placed and even managed to get the little correct step in. So I was really chuffed with that, and all the underneath was all red oxided and we were getting ready for top coat. The final bit to finish was the sport boot lid. These are slightly different than the standard car. They have vented louvers in because the engine creates a little bit more heat because it's a bit more powerful. But again, a few little dints on the top from misuse in the past from people, but that's to be expected from a 70s car. Finally got the whole outside of the car in primer just with the boot or engine bay to sort out. As you can see, I did it in a single width garage, so it was a bit difficult because I had to keep moving it over from side to side, but got there in the end. So the next was to clean the inner wings up on the boot bay, or engine bay should I say. I keep saying boot because it's the back of the car. These weren't too bad, apart from the chassis legs. There was a bit of heavy surface rust, but managed to get them out with the wire wheel and a flat pad and give them a good old treating with Genelite. Let that go off, it's rust prevention. Once I've done that, got my fateful red oxide out, and as you can see, you get the end results you need, and you really feel like you're moving on with the project. Excuse me. Once you get a bit of paint on, and yet more red oxide primer on the bulkhead, which is in really good condition. Although there was a little hole being cut in, so somebody could get access to the thermostat. So I fabricated a new piece and put that back in as original. But it makes a big difference, and you do feel like you're getting somewhere when you get a bit of paint laid down on the car. But the best thing is not to rush. Fortunately, the passengers had a little bit of corrosion on the bottom, but the rest of it was good. So rather than replace it, I thought I'll put a piece in. So again, I cut it out, cleaned all the rust off on the inside, and fabricated a short section in my bench. I think I butt welded this in from memories to try and reduce any flaps or ledges on the inside, and I got a great result with a bit of filler to tidy it up afterwards. Finally, after probably 18 months of work, I managed to get the inside all red oxided, all the floor pans and the bulkhead at the back. Like I say, I worked on this 2 days a week in my garage at night. I had a young daughter at the time. She was less than 12 months old, so the wife was very understanding. So once it was all in primer, it was going to go to the paint shop, so it was just a bit of a waiting game. But before that, I managed to get all the suspension components off and cleaned up and painted. I did them in 2-pack black, rebushed what I needed to do, wheel bearings. I had a little bit of repair work to do on the roof because there's a few dents in it, but it just seemed to take forever. And we got to the stage where I painted the inside myself because I didn't want to pay for someone to do that. That's not really seen. Did all the engine bay again, and did all the floor pans, all the inside in a 2-pack. I used an electric spray gun on this and got quite a good result, which was a first for me. It was one I bought via Practical Classics recommendations, and it was really good, especially on the textured paint, all under the arches. I was thinking, oh my god, this is going to be good when it was done, and I was really chuffed. And you see the end of your job then, and it makes it all worthwhile. But it is hard work to get to a stage where you can sort of relax and put your top coat in the hands of others. The worry is what it looks like because of all your preparation. So just when you've got rid of all the dirty grinding and rusty cleaning, you're back to stage 1 again with all the suspension plates and cover plates. But hey ho, you have to be done. Didn't get them sandblasted, I did them the old fashioned way. So then got the old internal washing line up, covered the car with some anti-static paint and got me primer and paint out. But by heck, makes a big difference when you see them from being rusted to nice shiny black, and you can't wait to fit them back on the car. But there's always a lot more than what you think. Front and rear suspension arms on the Imp. Some cars have a solid axle and McPherson struts. Then all the hubs, I refurbished all these with new kingpins before I painted them, and didn't take the back plates off, which I really kicked myself for, but I'll do that in the next refurb, which I'm on with at the moment. But it was 20 years ago or 18 years ago now. And then the front suspension arms, again, quite lucky. They were in real good condition because they do tend to corrode quite a bit because they get a lot of battering with the weather. And then you reach another milestone where you start assembling everything that you've cleaned and painted, which just seems to take forever at the time, but it looks fantastic, especially against fresh paint. All the shock absorbers re-cleaned up, rubbers cleaned, bushes replaced where required, braided hoses, all the new brake pipes. That's a bit of a nightmare because you realise you put stuff on and you shouldn't have done, like the back valance panel there. take on and off a couple of times to get the brake and the fuel lines through. And it's just trying to remember, even though at the time you strip them off, you say to yourself, I remember where that is. You never do. Always beneficial to take some photographs just for reference. But it moves you on and gives you a real boost. Again, I thought it's a bit of a funny situation. Do you put them all on, then you go to the paint shop and gets full of dust, or do you put them on afterwards, you've painted it and then risk damaging the fresh paint on the outside if you're swinging with the hammer or anything? So I decided I put all my suspension and brake pipes on, and if I had to clean all the dust off afterwards, then so be it. But of course, you always get dust from a body shop, whether it's from your car or cars are working on adjacent, but that's just the pain of restoration. Finally, the car came back from the paint shop, and although on the first inspection looked fantastic, when I started looking at the bottom of the sills and around the wheel arches, there was no paint on, and he did confess he had the apprentice paint it. So off it went back to him, and to be fair, he did the whole car again, and the results were outstanding. The fun bit begins though, starting to get all your cleaned up bits back on, headlamp bezels, which I've got new fortunately, headlamps. But as you can see, it's a bit difficult trying to get windows in and the trims on when you're in a narrow garage and you want to work on both sides and opening the doors. But I managed it in the end, got my new wheels on because I had all these ordered. All my bumpers were chromed, ready to go on. So I'd done quite a bit of prep work while it was in the paint shop. Then managed to get the engine bay and the engine in. In hindsight, looking at the yellow plug leads, I was a bit, I couldn't believe it afterwards, now I look. But at the time, that was what you did, and I tried to use what I had everything anodised, and again, I've painted stuff since, or removed paint from certain stuff like the filler cap for the oil. But, it really comes alive when you start getting the windscreens in and all the number plates and the trims and the wipers. It just seems to be a real completion project then, and you think you can see the end goal. Had all the interior in. I just needed to get some door panels cleaned up and put on, but that was my last stage of the interior. The carpets were in, headlining was in, so I wasn't that far away from finishing the vehicle. Eventually got it on the road and got it out the garage, and I drove and I thought, what on earth have I done here? It was so slow, but with these Hillmans you have to really rev them, and the more you use them, the better they are, and now I wouldn't do without it, I'll be quite honest. Here we are, 20 years on from the initial purchase, and there's been a few modifications done, as you'll see. Things been painted, plug leads been changed, paint come off things and stuff polished, engines replaced because I blew the engine up, I blew the gearbox up, just from use really, not lack of use. Exhaust changed slightly because that had lost its life during the 20 years. Done a bit of a modification as well, put a slightly different exhaust on. But I've still got it, done a little bit of paintwork since, not a great deal. Front panel basically down to stone chips and sills and the back of the rear wings. Changed the wheels recently, I just put some fresh set on, a bit wider on the rear, so I had to change the whole lot. But generally the car is what it is from the original restoration. I put a full set of front shockers on, adjustable shockers all the way around, and changed number plates from the pressed aluminium ones to raised letters. Also covered the aluminium sound deadening in the boot with black just to make it look a bit more neater. Did a bit of a refurb a couple of years ago, got rid of the carpets with the red binding on and put black ones in, put some new sound deadening in, but as you can see from the floors, they've never been touched from the day I did it, so it's not leaked in and there's no corrosion occurred, and the carpets in hindsight look far better all black rather than have the red binding on. Also made a boot rear wheel arches, they were getting a bit tatty, so I got the sewing machine out and did that. But the same seats are still in it. I've upgraded the dash, got rid of the wood effect and put stainless steel on. As you can see, it just got better, like a fine wine, I suppose. It's got better with age, and the more you have it and the longer you have it, the more you do. And I've been everywhere in it, from Scotland to Kent, and yes, I've had a few problems, but you do with classic cars. But like I've said in the past, I wouldn't do without it, and if you want a classic that you can use every day, the Hillman Imps are perfect. The fallacy of engines going and cylinder heads is all gone now. Really are a great car for a starter classic before they start creeping up. They're getting up in prices now, but before they get to ridiculous amounts, it's well worth considering. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed my restoration, and I'm sorry it's all images, but like I say, it was from 20 years ago, but you've got the gist of what I've got and where I am now. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you again.